Greetings. My name is Dina Levitz. I am a New York-based writer, yoga practitioner, and teacher, and I'm also helping to organize SOULFest, which we're delighted is going to be taking place in Manhattan in October. And in the lead up to SOULFest, I'm talking to some of the wonderfully talented presenters that are going to be offering up practices and classes at the festival. And today I'm really delighted to be joined by Jai Sugrim. And I've asked Jai, I'm so excited you're here. I asked Jai, he has so much experience, but to try to boil down his bio into a few short sentences, just to introduce him. And this is what he said. So Jai Sugrim is a yoga teacher, longevity expert, and biohacker with 27 years of professional experience. He helps his clients to age gracefully while extending their physical and mental health well into the second half of their lives. The main goals of his method, The Art of Aging, are to improve longevity, personal health span, and present-day cognitive function. Jai applies the use of science, physical exercise, spirituality, supplementation, and positive lifestyle choices to help his clients create a personalized approach to aging well. Wow, very impressive. Thank you so much, Jai. Delighted to be talking to you.
It's good to be here. It's nice to connect with you, Dina.
Absolutely. So before I kind of get into my questions, are we about to kind of embark on an era where we're all going to be over 100 and really kind of living so much longer? Is that what's in store for us?
Yes, I think it's super exciting. We're in the infancy of the biotech market and perfecting technologies that could enhance longevity. So I'm going to be the second generation adopter of some of the tech. I want to wait a little longer. Some of the wearables are amazing. They can predict a heart attack weeks outside of when they happen.
Yeah.
The monitoring of your blood, and the average consumers already going to the doctor super educated. Look, I've got these 43 biomarkers. I can interpret most of them. A blood test can be under $300. So the technology is getting decentralized and it's becoming affordable to everybody slowly but surely. If you remember, when cell phones came out, there were just big clunky things, and now like everybody's got one on every corner. So it's going to be the same, I think, with tech and biotech.
Yeah.
So we're at an exciting time. I think the yogis are the OG biohackers. They've always been doing things like internal cleansing with asana, pranayama. They do time restricted eating. They don't overeat. They live longer from these practices. So it's really the aspect of biohacking that's intriguing to me is the lifestyle modification, like sleeping well, eating in a certain rhythm, practicing regularly, healthy speech, not gossiping. The yogic code, the yogic way of being is very healthy. And so that's what I try to bring in more than, wearables or monitoring is second. But the lifestyle choices are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you do so many different things, but in terms of yoga in particular, how is it that you got started? Is there kind of a particular sort of first memory or way that you got kind of involved in the practice personally?
It's such a great question. So there's a philosophical element to yoga that I was exposed to very young in my family. I'm from an Indian family. But I grew up in upstate New York, as we were talking about earlier, in Sullivan County, and I was the only Indian family in the town. And I was shy about my culture. I was an out, it's like weird, but it wasn't embraced because we were the only Indian family. I couldn't be, I was a little shy about it. And so my grandfather would read the Bhagavad Gita to me. I knew what pujas were, even though I didn't again, embrace that stuff. Yeah. But it was later in life, in my late 20s, I discovered asana at the Equinox gym accidentally. I just walked into a class to help me run a better marathon for stretching. And I was pretty blown away. And then later, a couple years later, I found Jivamukti Yoga School, which merged the philosophy my grandfather was teaching me with a physical hatha practice. And that just kind of cooked my noodle, where I was just like, this is my culture. I'm coming home to my culture. It's answering my questions about life and death. I wanted to know where dead people go, like where do souls go? I'd lost my brother in my late 20s, and I nothing could quench my thirst. You know, I partied my face off. I dedicated marathons to him. All these extreme sports, and nothing was really satisfying me. And I knew in my heart of hearts that yoga will one day answer that question. So I, as an adult, going back to the cultural roots of it and surrendering, and then coming at it with a humble attitude of like, where did my brother go, and why do good young people die? Like why? That was a mystery to me. And so that mystery drew me into how Jivamukti was teaching with philosophy and physicality. That combination was very potent for me and seemed like a natural path for my personality type.
Yeah. So you were kind of getting into this with, in terms of kind of the cultural significance to you, the physicality, the philosophy, kind of the blending. But I was just going to ask now, you know, years and years and decades later, kind of into your yoga practice and teaching, what is it that makes it so relevant and a passion for you? Has it changed, or is it kind of what you were just talking about?
Oh, another excellent question. That's such a great question, because when I started, I would hear other people say, oh, yoga is adaptable to each stage of life. When you change, and I saw this in my personal training. I had a very successful private personal training practice. And, you know, I never relied on yoga classes to make a living, although I am a full-time teacher, and it's from the model of my personal training business. So I was always teaching like a 90-year-old, then a 60-year-old, and a 50-year-old, then a young person who wanted to put their leg over their head and do handstands. So I could see it in other people's lives applied. But then in my own life, I recently turned 47 a few months ago. I can't do the things I used to do when I was thinner. So my body has become, you saw the rings earlier, like I weave in gym training, athletic conditioning. Where my career started, I added a lot of muscle mass. When you get older, you lose a lot of muscle mass. So it's the one thing, you don't want to be frail and like fall and brace yourself. And so you have to train like your grip strength, your back strength, for your spine posture. I started running again. But what's interesting about this time is that I can still take away poses and mentally be happy that where I am internally, spiritually, as a person, my definition of myself. I don't need to cling to my youth or all the things that are available to youth. As they're slipping away, I'm able to handle that psychologically because of yoga, I think. And so my yoga practice used to be 2 hours of asana and pranayama a day. And now I consider my 6 mile runs 3 times a week, like it's such a concentration with the rhythm of your breath and the timing and the chi and the prana of it. Like, I consider that a yoga practice as well. I consider the way I weightlift with total. So basically I've expanded my view of yoga to be anything you do with full concentration. If you're fully focused, you could be writing a beautiful piece in a flow state and you feel like you're downloading the information. You're not like, syntax isn't something you're consciously messing with. It's just your sentence structure is going really well, right? All those things are yoga, but my actual asana practice is maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Only 2 of those are an hour and 2 are like a half hour. I'm content with that. The one thing we should all do is a ritual. So something that you do no matter if you're feeling well, tired, stiff, energized. I have a mantra practice that takes about 25 minutes to do. So I wake up, I have a tea, I make sure I'm like really alert, my phone's not on, I light a candle and I sit in front of my altar and I do this rhythmic chanting, Sanskrit, for about 25 minutes. And that is not using my body, it's just using my posture, but it helps my mind to sort of program itself. Whereas if I didn't do that, and I start reacting to the world, like I feel like my day is busier. I don't have such good mental control. I don't respond as peacefully to things.
Yeah.
So by having that thing, the aspect of my practice that doesn't change, which is the
Mm.
mantras,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still in the state of yoga, even though I may not do a lot of vinyasa yoga that day. And whereas, like, you know, for 15 years, I did tons of vinyasa yoga, but I just feel like to retain the concentration, the philosophy, like my friend Anand Sukaria sent me a book on the Bhagavad Gita. And so, like, I'm reading another version of the Bhagavad Gita as a psychedelic guide and looking at it as an interesting angle. So yoga to me is like a mind-body thing where if I'm feeding my mind these spiritual ideas from the Bhagavad Gita, I don't have to be on this yoga mat doing
Yes.
2 hours of asana anymore.
Yeah.
It's adapting it as I become 50. What does my practice look like? You know, it looks like a little strength training, a little cardio for my heart, certainly some asanas for my mobility, but I don't want to lose, like, I think when the body starts to age, if you've practiced well and you hold on to the mind and concentration of the yogi, like, that's the real gift, because everybody's body, it could be 50, 60, 70, or 80, your body will start to succumb, even if we live to 150.
Yeah.
At some point, it's going to encounter entropy and undergo deterioration, right? And so I think aging well as a yogi is to make those choices, like eating a little more protein, sleeping better. I used to get away with crappy sleep 2-3 nights in a row. I could make up and power my way through. And I'm like much more mindful of my brain health and, you know, what I need to do to heal and to recover, rather than just go straight out full force all into the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like gung ho.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said. This idea of the evolution of your practice and expanding kind of the definition of what we might think of as yoga. And I think you must have a little bit of a sixth sense or be a little psychic, because I was going to ask you about morning rituals. I'm asking everyone if there's, and which you got into a little bit already, as far as if there's sort of a necessary thing that you do to start your day to kind of feel whole. And maybe if there's also a way that you close out your day so that you can sleep better, maybe that you could share with us as well.
My mornings are great. My evenings need work. I've had both really good. So I just, you know, I'll go through the morning. What's important for all of us out there is the mind is like a field, and thoughts are seeds that sprout and germinate into the day we're making. So that whoever is listening to this, the key I want to impart is, for me, it's a mantra practice. For someone else, it could be affirmations or listening to their favorite teacher, a spoken word, some kind of positive reinforcement where you're still with yourself. It can be a walk, like with the sun coming up, walking your dog without your phone and just a cup of tea. But to have a ritual that connects you to yourself without too many thoughts from the outside influencing you immediately. And the one killer for everyone is one of the worst habits a human being can develop and get into. And I wish we could all work on this, is to not look at the phone first thing.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
The email that you weren't expecting could throw you for a loop, and you're starting your day with mental fluctuations happening very quickly. So for me, that's a mantra practice. And, you know, it could also be, if I wanted to change it, I could go on a jog, but to be alone with nature, you can hear the birds chirping here. I don't know if you know, like I open my door and I come out, I get up so early that I can see the sun coming up, and to be in that yogic rhythm and the circadian rhythm of the light of the universe coming down into your body, and then nighttime, it's starting to go away, so you start to slow down. So my night routine, when it's good, has to do with dimming the lights in my house. I have a pink salt rock lamp in my bedroom. I try, and I'm pretty good about it, about not bringing my phone in. I do like the phone alarm, so I leave it in the hallway, and that makes me get up and have to
create a little distance.
So I don't snooze, and I'm not tempted to look at it before bed. So lately I've had a bad habit of, watching YouTube or Netflix at the end of the day because I'm a little lonely. I moved back to the country a few years ago. I'm pretty adjusted to it, but I spend all week by myself. My partner comes up on the weekends.
Yeah.
So I feel like I could get a little more disciplined about the night. I might need a night meditation sequence or a night pranayama sequence, but it's just of late, it's kind of crept in. Watch a little YouTube, watch a little Netflix, but I have to be careful like what I watch because it can affect your dreams,
Definitely.
like if those conspiracy videos pop in and it's like imminent financial collapse, it'll just make your mind go bonkers. So, like I'll watch something like sci-fi, something kind of fantasy, fun to just get into an adventure, go into another world. But I think it's not something I want to stay with. I'd like to get back to meditation or do another mantra sequence or a pranayama or some restorative yoga. But I think it's just of late, I noticed that habit creeping in.
Interesting. Same here, actually. Yeah. I guess just like an asana practice, those rituals can also change as well. And get off of our game and then kind of have to
come back,
work it, come back, just like our meditation practice. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you, Jai, I mean, you obviously work with lots of different clients from all walks of life. You inspire them. Who or what inspires you? And particularly kind of right now at this moment, if there's something that's bringing you inspiration.
I have intentionally, so I keep friendships with people that are a little younger, 10, 15 years younger than me. And I've always in life kept friendships with people 10, 15 years ahead of me. And somehow I kind of learned, I don't know, in college, I figured that out, that was important to be around people of different ages. And as I've moved through time, the youth are hip. They teach you things. They know what's relevant. They know what's, particularly with things like technology or new trends or what's communicating. And an older man for me or woman who has mastered themselves has experience they can share with you. So that has helped me in life. And the teachers I've chosen have at least 20 years ahead of me in practice. This is really helpful. So I went to a teacher once for life advice, and I'm really careful to not bother my teachers too much or ask them a million questions, because when I really need them, they're there for me. They're really present. So, I wasn't sure. An opportunity came to me to make a TV show about yoga once, and I felt insecure about, I'm like, oh, I've only been teaching for 8 years at this point. What do I have to say? I'm going to run out of content. They want to do 65 episodes. You're the type of person who should be doing this, and not me. I was 37, and he said, no, your mind, this is around the time where your mind starts to mature and change. And he coached me and gave me the boost and assured me that I would adapt to the cameras and the set. And he got me over my insecurities. And I think having people that are further along than you, and now I'm in that role, right? So a lot of young men around 28 and 30 get coaching for me. They set up sessions where I guide them in certain aspects of their life with their health, developing mental resilience, their dating, things like that. They reach out. And so for me, having teachers that are so far along are very helpful. But I'm inspired by my intuition right now, because my relationship with my teachers have transformed in a way. They broke and snapped for a minute. There's this saying that if you see the Buddha on the road, to kill him. And that's a metaphor, kind of a joke about that our whole life, we cannot be like this. Yes, we need humility. We need the presence of a teacher to learn. But at a certain point, the idea of killing your teacher is that when you develop enough life experience, in a way, you'll always be like a child in front of your teacher, but you're also like a peer of your teacher. And as a man approaching 50, I have learned to trust myself. right? I learned to trust myself. And my partner, I have developed enough confidence in our relationship to sort of talk through certain issues, or again, if I feel insecure about something I want to do, I can run it by her. But really, I've been practicing for so long. I've been awakening since age 13. I had a spiritual awakening that I'm learning now to trust myself and to trust my practice. And like, if something is on my mind that I'm unsettled about, I'll just put on music or just go out and listen to the birds and run 6 miles and just ask the universe a contemplation, like, what's my move here? And I'll look for a sign, and I'll go through the pros and cons. But when you do a long time of yoga, I think your spirit guides you. Your own higher self in another dimension can coach you, can guide you. But there are experts. You know, if I find an expert in a field I'm interested in, like I've pivoted in my business where I was teaching yoga to young people that wanted to master their bodies and master asana. And I realized I'm no longer doing these poses I'm teaching. I don't put my leg over my head anymore. I do very few handstands. I still do a little bit of handstands. I don't bind as easily. So I'm like, wait, what's relevant and topical for me is working with my private clients and sharing the knowledge of aging well. So I did the turn into that demographic to where the content I generate isn't about mastery of the body so much, it's mastery of overall mind-body health with respect to aging. So the experts I would lean into, I follow Peter Attia's work and David Sinclair's work. I really admire how they're able to look at large sets of data and extrapolate an intelligent conclusion, and the way they're thinking helps me to model my thinking, so it's science-based and cohesive.
Wonderful. I love that. I love the idea of trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, letting the spirits guide you, and just all the great things that you said. So for folks that might come check you out during SOULFest, or that they would come and just partake in a class or be a client with you, how would you describe kind of what they would be in store for? Is there a certain sort of vibe or commonality to kind of your classes, experiences with you? What would they be in store for?
I'm so in love with life and how it's revealed by the practice. I have so much reverence for yoga. We talked earlier about what drew me to yoga was the search for life and death. Like, where do dead people go, and why do good people die? So when I walk into a yoga room, it's all of my crap is usually, if something's disturbing me, everything in my mind is able to move to the side. And I've never been bored as a teacher. If I sense that I'm getting burnt out or bored, I take a holiday. I take a yoga retreat. I go to India, or I go somewhere and I work on myself, and then my well is filled and I come back. So I count the breath. I'm faithful to the breath as a means to create a feat of endogenous chemistry to alter our state out of the ordinary state of perception. An ordinary state of perception is an acute left brain, problem-solving, deductive reasoning mind. And that is very useful to navigate the world of Midtown Manhattan at noon. You got to have that part of yourself working. Right. But when you're in a meditation, you're trying to calm your mind and observe your thought and become the one witnessing your thoughts, you need to hone a special concentration. And I believe the count and rhythm of the breath, which you can find if you go to an Ashtanga yoga class or a Jivamukti yoga class, that influence in my history is what they're going to get a methodical, scientific process that builds a special type of concentration. And the love and the passion that I have for it, and the fun, I bring a silliness sometimes to it, but I'm a scientist about how it works and the order of the sequence. It's the most ordered sequence in vinyasa you can find. And I'm faithful to it because it has quenched my thirst to that question. It has given me peace. So I hope when I go to teach, I know that a mother, just like my mother lost her son, could be in that room. I know that some father could have lost their job and they're worried about feeding their family and living off their savings. I know that people are out there struggling right now. So what they get is they get the infinite healing powers of Shiva coming through. I channel the power of yoga to reveal to you what you need to see that day. And I have such reverence for it because of what it's done for me. And so people get an authentic, scientific, raw experience of yoga. And the beauty of it, it's that it's left up to their interpretation. I will not try to code their experience. People tell me all kinds of outlandish things, like I've been astral projecting in your class. I've traveled to this dimension, and I just bow and humbly acknowledge that that's their experience. It's not something I'm going to put into a box or necessarily unpackage in that second. But you know, it's the reverence and love for yoga is palpable in my class. Like I dig it. I really, really, really honor and dig the practice.
Well said. Well said. I wanted to ask you kind of two sort of related questions about the pandemic, or really sort of this challenging period that we've been in the last few years. You know, for so many different reasons. But what have you, Jai, learned about yourself? And also whether it's something that's a little bit more kind of frivolous, like baking bread or something like that. Are there any sort of new hobbies or things that you've taken up during this time, just to provide?
It's hilarious you mentioned baking bread. I have all the time on my hands here. I have gone to bread making. But no, I want to comment on something dark that I think we all went through. And this saddened me about myself, and it saddened me about the yoga community, that human nature, the things, the division and crazy separation and tribalism we see in the world is not new. This is standard operating procedure for how primates work. We all live in a hierarchy. We all have the need to single out the alpha male and alpha female, and we fall into tribes and groups, and we like to be in the best status within our group, and to confer a certain status of we need certainty in order to make us feel safe about the world. And I think this was hacked. I don't know by who, but you know, I was disappointed by how even within yoga, which is about a lot about ahimsa, nonviolence, and coming together, how we as a community split apart and attacked each other. I'm not going to drop names, but people with big podcasts making attacks on each other, hurling vituperation. I myself, you know, getting defensive. I realized I made a few political posts, and it just polarized everyone. So I stay out of it, because no matter what side you go on of an issue, of an important issue, 50% of people feel the opposite way, or a chunk of people do. So that was something we all, I think, needed to go through, and it's particularly in the yoga subset. Interesting, because we can look and say, we're not, as much as we throw these spiritual teachings around, and we're the higher self, where there's no self, or the direct perception of emptiness, we're not impervious to this need to be in the hierarchy. We want the best status. We want to be on the winning team. But what we can do now is to look at that. And I asked myself, Jai, when you made that political post that just drove people nuts, what was that connected to your highest desire? And my highest desire as a teacher is to bring as many divergent people in the room and get them to breathe and move together and experience the oneness of being. So my underlying purpose for birth and life and incarnating and moving through this world is to bring people together. And here's a post I made that split people apart. So I had to look at that and go through a meditation with myself and realize the folly of that move, and to learn. I'm asking myself, what can I learn from how I behaved? And 2021 was the most triggering, dangerous, crazy year for me on this planet because of the moves the government made. It terrified me and I got very paranoid, and it brought out a lot of darkness and a lot of defensiveness and a lot of negative energy. And so 2022, I planted my feet, looked at those posts I did and said, well, where did that come from? And what do you hope to get from creating content like that? And it made me reconnect to my higher purpose and to say, now when I create a piece of content, what is the purpose of this content? What is the consumer of this content? Are they going to feel peaceful, or are they going to feel aggressive? And at the same time, I also give myself a little space, like, hey, if I'm accurate 80% of the time, that's good. I'm human. I'm subject to my own flaws, but to have more of an overarching theme of unity, right? And to look at the pandemic and say, were you proud of the way you behaved in 2020 and 2021? And I'm not on all fronts. I was proud that I taught. I was proud I had a retreat that helped people. I held space. I adapted my business to a digital format. You know, a lot of good came, but a lot of really ugly things were pulled out of me because of my fears, because of the health crisis, the anxiety. You know, I couldn't travel. I couldn't see my mom and dad in Vancouver. You know, a lot of rage, all that stuff now I can bring to my mat. I can bring to like for example, we're social again now that there aren't lockdowns. So I went to an art opening in the neighborhood the other day, and people are talking about politics, and like I'm bringing that up last with people, because my neighbors, I want to know what their skills are. I want to know what their hobbies are, what turns them on, what brings them to life, what are their spiritual practices, do they like getting into hiking, what do they do for fun? And then at the last thing I can find out, well, what do you feel about this latest Supreme Court rule? Like, I don't want to start there. That's what I learned about myself from looking at, when I start there, it pushes me into a judgment space. And I'm like, how can you believe this? And how someone can believe a different thing is they just have a unique news feed. And I didn't realize that everybody, because of phones, has these news feeds that reinforces their unique biases, right? So a person could feel differently about an important issue as me because they're getting different data in, and realizing that I shouldn't judge someone immediately because they're in a different camp. I should get to know them. And if they then want to discuss why they feel that way, then maybe we go into it, rather than when I start with politics, it creates so much friction and judgment, and it doesn't build any connection. So the thing I'm looking at is those negative things that the lockdown and the stress of the pandemic and the stress of the health crisis brought out. How would I respond differently if I could learn a lesson from my negative behavior? So I think we all have some things to look at, and it's not pleasant, and it's shadowy to look at your flaws, and it's very humbling, and it's a real pain in the neck. And sometimes you get emotional and you can get upset with yourself, and you have to dig even further into your childhood to see where some of your programming comes from. And that's hard work. You know, it's hard work. Right now, people are struggling, like around here with the gas prices and oil prices. Like, people are taking second jobs to be able to get by. It's not, and communities are helping each other, which is a good thing. But the key was for me to use those as learning lessons, to not say, oh, I was right on all fronts of how I behaved. You know, I got some clues about myself that were very valuable.
And I think it's very brave to be that, you know, honest and open. So thanks for sharing and saying that. I'm not always perfect, because none of us are, and you know, there's a lot to be learned from these last few years. It's been, just to call it difficult is such an understatement. I agree. The last thing that I want to ask is completely different. It's just a question I'm asking you because I saw this in your bio. You worked with the Yankees.
Yes.
who then went on to in a completely different direction. Yes, I want to end on a lighter note because of just all the profound things that you were saying. Yeah, you worked with the Yankees, who went on to win a World Series. Can we say to any degree that, you know, practicing yoga helped them to win this World Series? What was the
Well, I was not a yoga teacher then. I was just starting my yoga journey. I was actually the team's massage therapist.
Oh, okay.
But I did learn a lot of yoga from one of the pitchers. So Mariano Rivera is a Hall of Fame closer, and he's a relief pitcher who seals the deal when we're about to win, or when there's a high pressure situation. And so I would massage him from the first to the 7th inning every single day. So we had a lot of time together.
Yeah.
We developed a good relationship. And so one day I asked him, I said, Mo, how come you throw your best stuff, your fastest, hardest pitch, the cutter, someone smashes it out of the park and the game's now tied. Now everything's like tense. How do you turn around and throw strikes again? And he said something funny, which I didn't understand because I was 26 or 27. He goes, ice water in your veins. I said, ice water in your veins. And I had to think about it. And what he was getting at is a yogic concept of self-control and equanimity, but he wasn't using these yogic terms. What he was basically getting at by saying ice water in the veins is I have self-control, I take a breath, I clear my mind, and I do my job that I've trained so hard to do. I turn around and I throw strikes again. Yes. So he had the yogic equanimity and he said, when the noise of the crowd, when he's in the zone, he can't hear 57,000 people. What? He said he can't hear the noise of the crowd. Like he's in
flow state. Yeah.
He's in flow, and he's locked into to seeing where he has to throw the ball and what the task is at hand. So the massages I did were definitely helpful. That's why the team voted me in to get the World Series ring.
All right.
And I was actually learning a lot of yoga. I have the first episode of my podcast, there's 6 lessons I learned from the New York Yankees. So I was getting these great teachings from the highest level of mind-body focus you can imagine, the pro athlete championship level. But I didn't put it into yogic vocabulary until I became in my 40s and I could understand, wow, these people were masters of their mind, or you don't win at that level if you don't have an ability to harness the power of your mind. So I think it was a great thing to do so young and to be a part of, and to then look back over your shoulder and have the lens of the philosophical texts like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, to then go, oh, that's what we were doing. We were clearing our mind of the trash. We were taking a breath and we were getting in the zone. And so that's what yoga does. Now, if I were to go back to pro sports, I could teach it in a way different way than I understood as a kid. As a kid, I was functioning more as a healer and as part of the medical staff. But those experiences of the highest level of focus, being around people who had to day in, day out, tap into that super focused state, that made an impact on me. And I think it's something that I'm able to teach now to others, and to help someone tap into their own inner power, by breathing, by relaxing. I'm actually teaching a shooter, this guy on a farm nearby. He has a scholarship where he shoots. His sport is shooting, and so he's been losing his focus. And he's reached out to me. His mom made him reach out to me, and we're doing lessons where he's able to use the breathing and feel the target and communicate with himself, so he can get back his accuracy. Something's throwing his equilibrium off. So like whatever I learned with the Yankees is helping me with coaching clients now, I'm sure.
That's fantastic. It all kind of comes together into sort of the tapestry of everything that you know. And I love the idea of almost learning yogic lessons from these very unexpected places. So
Yeah,
phenomenal. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jai. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. You're such a wealth of knowledge and yeah, just unexpected inspiration. So thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing you at SOULFest.
absolutely. I can't wait to teach at SOULFest. It's going to
Yeah,
be fun.
it's going to be great.